Welcome to the second to last of our marketing webinar series. This is for the Center for Crop Diversification and all of our great partners this fall. Today we're going to be talking about off-season marketing and customer retention. And I'll just call attention really quickly to all these logos that are down here at the bottom, and a special thanks to all those partners. I'll mention them again here in a minute. But it's taken a lot of different folks to get in, to put this thing on. And our presenters today, I'm Brett Wolf. I work with the University of Kentucky. And these other folks will introduce themselves, but Emily Spencer in Savannah, Columbia also work in the University of Kentucky Ag Economics, and then Olivia Vogel from K-Card will be presenting today as well. Just a quick reminder, we do have one more on the right-hand side here. I have the nice graphic that Emily made of our fall webinar series, and that's specifically with farmers markets looking ahead to a 2021 season with some uncertainty about COVID still looming, but also the fact that a farmers market season, off-season, is a good time to be thinking and revising. Is it just generally a good time to be thinking about plans for 2021? And just to also let you know, the recordings of our previous webinars are now available. Those are all available on the CCD main website. This one and next week's will also be recorded as well and distributed. A big thanks, have the in bold here, must be important. The USDA Specialty Crop Block Grant Program has paid for the development, paid for our time to develop a number of these different materials. The Marketing for All program and the Market Ready program have both in part been supported by that. Which is administered through our friends at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. I also just want to give a quick shout out to all of our partners, K-Card, from whom you'll hear from Olivia later today, but also the Kentucky Horticulture Council, who helped out with the Exploring Markets and Crops webinar, Community Farm Alliance, who we'll hear from next week on the Farmers Market in 2021, and KDA, you'll hear from them next week. And again, thanks to the support on the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program as well. And a shout out to my co-planning team members, Emily and Savannah, both of whom you'll hear from today. And so with that, I will turn it over to Emily.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Brett. So just to start off, this is just kind of an overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to do a brief overview of off-season marketing. What is it? Why should we care about it? Those kinds of things, and then a couple ideas of ways we can use it, and you can just go from there throughout the rest of the webinar and just kind of have those things in your mind about, ways you can use the things that Savannah, Brett, and Olivia are going to talk to you about. Savannah is going to talk to you all about customer retention and go through the details on that, and then Olivia is going to go through really important and frank conversations that we need to have with buyers when we're thinking about entering, into a new season of selling. And then Brett's going to finish us off with email marketing tactics, and then also think about how can we make the off season maybe not the off season, and talk about some season extension things. All right, so 2020 has been a crazy year, and I know that's an understatement. And I think something that's really interesting that's come out of this year is this new interest in local food, at least this new revived interest from a lot of people in these direct-to-consumer markets. So farmers markets and CSA shares, we've seen reports from all over the state and the country of, a lot of CSA shares selling out in record time this year. Farmers markets seeing a lot more crowds, those kinds of things. And we just want to highlight, the reasons a lot of this was happening at the beginning of the pandemic was, people were having feelings of food insecurity. So maybe for the first time they went to the grocery store and they didn't have the beef that they always expected, or, and that's really frightening for a lot of people to see. So with that, the crowded grocery stores, were alarming and unsettling, particularly in a time when you're supposed to stay away from other people. And then I think there's also this really, really awesome desire to support local. Maybe people took their farmers market down the street for granted, and for the first time really understood that these things aren't promised, and really wanted to step up and support their local producers. So, keeping all this in mind, we really want to move forward and think about how do we keep this up? How do we engage these people more sustainably, and keep them as our customers as we move forward? So just kind of want to keep that as a frame for the rest of this webinar. So why is off-season marketing important? As you'll hear later, the number one reason off-season marketing is important is customer retention. So you don't want to just fall off of people's radars, at the end of the fall and then pop back up in the spring because, it doesn't really drive any customer loyalty to your brand or your products. You might have the best tomatoes on the block, but, maybe your tent's going to be in a different spot next year or something like that. And, people won't necessarily, find your product. It creates top of mind awareness. So again, just keeping in people's minds, this is the brand I love. This is the farmers that I love and the producers that I love. And wanting to buy from them for that reason. Generates hype for peak season. So, even if you don't, put any products out in the off season, you can talk about, man, I remember those Brett's Brussels sprouts and I just am really craving those this time of year. And I can't wait for, April to roll around so I can get those again. And then again, it's really just this slower time. I mean, I know off season is kind of in quotes here. I know none of us are really in an off season ever. But it really is a time where you can focus all of your business skills on this marketing. So it doesn't have to necessarily be marketing only in this time period. I want you all to, think about how can I market now for things that will really benefit me during the peak season. So these are some platforms that are pretty straightforward and we're going to talk about a couple of them today. So you have your traditional social media outlets, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Those are really good for sharing out, information about your farms, etc. Email marketing, which Brett's going to go to in a lot more detail later, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. But some examples of either low cost or free softwares you can use to send out, mass emails, MailChimp, Square, and Sender, and they all have different, perks and whatnot. But some of them are pretty easy. You can insert photos and things like that. So I definitely recommend checking those out. And then something I'm going to highlight today is Facebook groups, which I think is not really a traditional marketing channel, and maybe not something you've ever thought of as a marketing channel at all. So just going to think through some of those things. So Facebook groups are different from a normal business page where you have, we'll be at the market this week. This is the times. These are some products we'll have. Those kinds of things. Facebook groups are a private group, so it's not something that everyone sees. I think, let's think about CSA shares. Maybe every single person that buys a CSA share from you, you can invite them into this Facebook group or something like that, or people who buy from your stand at the farmer's market, you can get their contact information and invite them through that as well. And the goals of Facebook groups are, again, different than kind of a regular Facebook page. So first of all, you really want to drive engagement. And what this is really creating trust between your customers and each other and your customers and you. So, it might take some time to do this. People don't just share all of their thoughts and feelings on Facebook groups right off the bat. But, if you can post in there consistently, ask people, ideas of recipes to make with this vegetable or, something like that, and really get people to get out of their comfort zone and engage with each other, it'll happen. And then it's a safe space to evaluate product ideas. So, maybe you're thinking about investing in a new heirloom tomato for next season or something. And, before you make that big step and make that investment, you can really talk to your customers directly and ask, is this something you would even be interested in? And maybe they would, and it's a really good step to take, or maybe they give you some, useful feedback and you can go from there. Customer values, I think, is a really, really important one that Facebook groups can help us with. So, particularly in this time where maybe you have a lot of new customers from the last couple of years, and in this time of, the pandemic and everything, it's really a cool way to try to understand how local food and how your local food affected your customers or met a need that maybe they weren't having met before. So really understanding those customer values can help you, rethink your marketing in the off season, but also in the busy season as well. And at the end of the day, these groups are really just to cultivate community. So people buy from who they know and people buy from who they trust. You can have the best product at the market, but at the end of the day, people will buy from you because they trust you. And Facebook groups, I think, are uniquely situated to kind of create these relationships that maybe a traditional business page wouldn't. So what kinds of things should we talk about in email marketing and on our Facebook pages and also in these Facebook groups? So education, I think, you know, a lot of us who are in the ag industry kind of take a lot of this for granted. But a lot of people buy local because they like knowing where their food comes from and like they like knowing who grows it. So if you think about, you know, what are the animals doing in the winter? What kind of soil amendments or cover crop do you use? You know, what kind of seeds are you considering for next season? Those kinds of things, but also just who you are and why you do what you do. You know, I wouldn't take these things for granted and assume that everyone knows, you know, or understands any of this stuff. Because I would argue that probably a lot of people don't, and it's, you know, really useful for people to be able to engage with you in that way. And then all three of these are really, really nice ways to get customer feedback. So, you know, we have traditional surveys, which we are conveniently talking about in a webinar next week if anyone wants to tune in. Polls, so, you know, a lot of social media platforms, I know Facebook and Instagram both offer pretty simple polling techniques where you can just ask, you know, out of these 3 tomatoes, which one should we have next year? People can select a little bubble. Or a question post, which I really like. So you can make, you know, just an open-ended post where you can ask, what are some things that you wish we had at our market this year that you weren't able to get? Something like that. So it gives people an opportunity to really engage with you and also engage with each other, and really give you some hopefully useful feedback. Another thing that you can do on these platforms is giveaways. So giveaways are really, you know, an interesting way to get new customers. You know, you can get people to share your posts or things like that. But I think they're also a really useful way to ensure customer loyalty, not because you're giving away free stuff or anything like that, but because people just like to know that, you know, you're thinking about them and that you care about them as customers. There's 2 examples of some Instagram giveaways here from a farm in Ohio. There's the Big Ass Kohlrabi Challenge, which I think they essentially just, whoever had the biggest kohlrabi in their CSA share that week, they took a picture next to their head and tried to compare it to their head size. I think they just randomly chose a winner from that. And then another really interesting one is they literally gave away these little golden tickets in different CSA shares or farmers market bags. And if you, you know, got one of those, you post it on Facebook, everyone can see it, and then they give you, I think, a small voucher. So things like this. So, you know, giveaways don't have to be crazy. They don't have to be, you know, giving away $100 gift certificate to your market stand or anything like that. You know, it's something very simple, like a single tomato or, you know, half a watermelon or something like that. And people just like to engage with the farmers, and they like to engage with, you know, the businesses that they're buying their products from. So last, I just want to highlight this idea of, you know, using the off season as a way to profit in the peak season. So some ways to do this: you can organize your photos. I know that's a huge one, where, you know, you take photos maybe every week at the markets or, you know, while you're growing, but then really taking that time in the off season to organize those into folders. So these are all for, you know, production. This is all market. These are tomatoes, watermelons, carrots, etc. And having those organized will just make it super easy on you to, you know, build out these social media posts and other marketing techniques later on. So you don't even have to think about it. You can just be like, oh, I need, you know I need a picture of produce. I can go right to this folder and go from there. Build your customer database. So in kind of a similar vein, just, you know, consolidating all of the places that you might have your customers' information. So on your, you know, your email, on Square, if you use Square, things like that, and really bringing it all into one spreadsheet is just a really, really nice way to use your time in the off season. So you can, you know, use those contact information for marketing. And then scheduling posts. I think this one is incredibly helpful, and at least I know for myself and the pages that I run, entirely underutilized. So Facebook and Instagram both, and you can run them both through Facebook, have a way for you to literally create posts today that will be posted in March. So you can kind of see down at the bottom of that post where it says publish and then schedule post. So instead of just hitting the publish button, you hit that down arrow, schedule post, and you can schedule it months out. Super, super nice. So if you know, small things, like I know that Valentine's Day is February 14th, so I can post a heart-shaped carrot that I found or something like that, just to keep people engaged and interested in the things that you're doing, but you don't even have to really think about it at the time it's happening. So just really want to hammer home this, use the time you have now to save you time in the busy season. I know it's really, really hard to think about these, kind of cheeky social media posts during the time when you don't even have time to get enough sleep yourself. So using this time where you do have the time to make these posts can be super useful for you in the long run. Here is my contact information. If anyone wants to reach out if they have any questions, I am around, and thank you.
Well, thanks, Emily. My main objection to the kohlrabi contest is that I feel like if I were entering, I would be distinctly at a disadvantage if the reference point is head size, because there's watermelons I could probably dwarf. So,
right.
But that's a good example of building that kind of fun, lighthearted hype, but also keeping the focus on the product. And I just want to mention real quick, all three of the other presenters you're going to hear from today have worked with businesses that were trying to sell specialty crop products to customers. They have real depth of experience with this out in whatever is closest to the real world that we live in. And I think I just want to emphasize that this isn't just coming from a place of platitude, it's coming from a place of actually having experience doing these things and seeing what people respond to. So I'll just mention that real quick. A couple of things Emily mentioned too that I think are important. One is the idea that this current moment is kind of special. We have attention in the local food spheres in a way that we maybe haven't in the past. But on the flip side, every off season or every transitional period through the year is an opportunity to think forward about how you can improve on last year, capture momentum that you've gotten. And I think that requires a little bit of a focus on some specific goals, because if you just say, I want to work on my marketing, that's the equivalent, when people like us hear that, that's the equivalent of saying, well, I grow a bunch of vegetables. I really want to work on my production this year. Well, that can mean a whole lot of different things. That can mean managing your pests. That could be managing irrigation. It could be trying new varieties. It could be trying new systems. There's a whole lot of different things, and it's very easy to quickly become overwhelmed. And I think one of those potential goals that you might be thinking about, if you had a pretty good year and you saw a bunch of new faces, is this specific goal of customer retention. And you may be thinking, Brett, you're a brilliant marketing mind. You've told me that if I have customers, I should keep them. Yes, but there's reasons for that beyond just the basic, oh, okay, it's cool to keep customers. And so Savannah is going to talk us through a little bit of why that's important, and move into some of the hows of what that might look like.
Hey everybody, I'm Savannah. So today we're going to talk about customer retention. And by definition, customer retention is engaging existing customers, while customer acquisition is focused on gaining new customers. There are a lot of people that place an emphasis on gaining new customers each year, which is important. But being able to retain your current customers is probably more important for our CSA, farm to school, farmers market vendors, and our small business owners. Taking the time to create relationships and do things that keep your customers happy most often turns them into brand loyal customers. That keeps them coming back to your farm business each year. And they will most likely share your business with their friends, which is a win-win for you, because that could turn into a customer acquisition and all you had to do was just keep your current customers happy. So you may be thinking, why should I care about customer retention? And next slide. So basically, here are some statistics. You should care because it costs 5 times more to attract a new customer than it does to retain one. And this is because you're spending money on advertising and telling people about your business and farm, followed by convincing them to choose your business over someone else's, while existing customers already know those details and have already made the choice to pick your business over a competitor. And second, there is a 25 to 95% increase in profits with just a 5% increase in customer retention. And that's a wide range, but customers generate increasing profits each year they're with a company. And returning customers often buy more from a business over time. And as they do, the operating cost you spend on serving them declines. Additionally, oh wait, can we go back? Sorry. Additionally, once a customer has created a relationship with you and your business, they will often pay a premium to continue to do business with you rather than to switch to a competitor that they are unfamiliar with or uncomfortable with. And you still have the opportunity to use your current customer base as an acquisition aid when they tell their friends about your business, because they're happy with the way you are doing things and the products and services they're receiving. So next we have some highs and lows. If you take care of your current customers, you will have lower marketing needs. You will spend less time and effort and money finding and focusing on new customers and convincing them to purchase from you as opposed to other competitors. And overall, this leads to lower cost. It's less work to get more out of your existing customers, and your time and effort and money matter. And you can make the best use of that focusing on existing customers because they have higher conversion rates. They've already bought from you, so they will most likely buy from you again unless they had a negative experience. But you've already convinced them to trust your business and to buy from you, so it will be easier for them to buy again from a business and a product that they are confident in. And most customers come back. It's just more comfortable to buy again from someone who you have some sort of relationship with than to go with someone new. So focusing on those relationships are important. And then we have higher profits. Customers that have done business with you before are more likely to spend money with your business, which increases profits. And existing customers are less focused on price, which makes upselling and cross-selling your other products easier for you. It won't be as hard to convince them to be interested in other products if they already like something that you offer. And I think, Emily, I think we missed a slide. Wait, can you maybe go back one more? Okay, well, that's fine. We can just go to the next slide. I think it might be in there somewhere. So here are some retention strategies. First, be present on social media. This is often where customers see posts and info from your farm. And customers often share their favorite farms and local food, vendors, people through social media. And that can lead to a new customer without any extra work on your part. Social media is a place where you can make those personal connections with people, and it gives you a place to show the highlights of your farm, the ups and downs that make farming relatable, and your customers want to see the things that are happening on your farm. It makes them feel connected, so try to always have a presence on social media and try to keep your presence all year round. Like Emily talked about, don't post during the CSA season and then be radio silent in the off season. Don't come back to social media marketing when you're ready to get something out of your consumers. It's important to be present at all times, and it allows you to create deeper relationship with your customers, which will be a benefit to you. So next, be open. Ask your customers if they are happy with your products. Is your CSA providing customers with what they were expecting? As we talked about, there's always room to make changes and improvement to your business, and taking the time to do that and see what your customers like from surveys or polls or questions really makes them feel like valued about their input and opinions. And next, we should continue to make personal connections. Personal connections can influence a customer's decision to remain a customer or go somewhere else. And this can be done through the small tidbits of social media or a weekly newsletter. And then lastly, be consistent. People like the comfort of consistency. And this is why we stress having a continuous presence on social media, but it can also be done with your products. So for example, it's important for customers to know what to expect from your CSA each week, or that you will be at the farmer's market every Saturday. If you're only attending half the farmers markets or your consumers aren't aware of when you're there, how do you expect them to be loyal to your booth when they have to find alternatives or are unsure of what you have? So just keep talking. A lot of people think that we don't want to see what happens on the farm every day, but honestly, that's what makes people feel connected and makes farming relatable to them. Even if they don't farm or don't have a big idea of farming, it makes it relatable. There's a farm I actually follow on Instagram, and I watch their stories every day, and it makes me feel connected to a farm that I've never even been to all the way in California. And the just keep talking idea is to capture moments on your farm and share them on social media platforms, because that's what keeps people interested and coming back. So next we have some ideas to implement. First, offer surprises. This can be as small as a handwritten note or an extra item in the weekly share. This gets customers excited to be a part of your business. Second, we have a customer survey, which we've kind of touched on a little bit, but just ask your customers what they would like to see, and if it's attainable, maybe try to do that. It makes them feel important. Third, an email newsletter. Many of you probably already do this, but just putting that out there because it's the #1 customer strategy that actually works. And even though it's simple, newsletters remind customers of your brand every time they open their inbox. And then fourth, understand customer trends. How customers buy things is a key piece of retention, especially with CSAs. There are a lot of customers that like to one-stop shop, and not being able to get everything at one place could keep some customers from coming back or renewing their subscription. So that could be a question you could ask in your survey, how could I serve you better with my CSA box? I used to work for a CSA a few years ago, and we offered a meat and egg addition to our share box, and customers really liked that. And that's not attainable for everyone, but it helped us meet the needs of our customers. And something like that could also draw in extra customers as well, new customers as well. And then reducing friction. Everybody knows how easy it is to buy things from Amazon. If you're an existing customer, you can buy something in just one click. So the idea of reducing friction is to make the process of purchasing a share or buying at the farmer's market as seamless and easy as possible. You don't want buying from your business to be stressful or a hard experience for any consumer. And then understanding consumers' problems. If customers are having an issue, try your best to help them. Customers will not go back to someone who is difficult to deal with or isn't trying to be understanding to the best of your ability and circumstance that you could provide. And then crossing and upselling, you should use your customers' current interests to show them the other items you have, because it's a lot less work to sell to an existing customer than to a new one. And then lastly, we have a loyalty program, and rewarding customers on their continued loyalty can keep customers coming back and shows that they're important, but it comes in many shapes and sizes. Maybe you could offer a discount if someone wants to add more items to their share, or a discount for bringing in a new customer, or an extra item in a first box for renewing a subscription each year. Loyalty programs really depend on what you're able to do, but customers really appreciate the thought and the effort of them. And then in summary, there are little things you can do to keep your customers coming back, like social media presence, your email newsletters, and the ease of buying from you. And try to improve where you can and be patient. Nothing happens overnight, and it takes continuous effort to create these long-lasting relationships with customers that keep them coming back. And lastly, the E in existing customer does stand for easy. It's easier to retain customers than bring in new ones. It's easier to sell more to existing customers, and it's easier to meet the needs of current customers over new ones. So the last slide is my contact information. Feel free to reach out with questions or comments, and my inbox is always open.
Great, thank you, Savannah. Well, one thing that kind of just came to mind is that as far as for us, our clients, our customers, are people like you who are interested in educational materials. We try to get people to turn out for these events. And one of the things I have done is I have kept a list of people, of the email addresses of people who have registered for similar things in the past and who have attended in the past. And I make sure to communicate new offerings. So you all are an example, many of you are an example of customer retention today, because and there's, you know, it's not just a pat on the back, but it's more just thinking, okay, you already have expressed an interest, you've already shown up. That demonstrates a level of commitment that me pulling somebody off the street is not necessarily going to have. And in the local food scene, we do see these pockets, at least, and sometimes large pockets, of intense loyalty in customer bases. However, this year you may be getting people who have bought stuff from you for the first time. Maybe they came and were interested in buying stuff for you one time this year, and that was it, and you didn't hear from them again. And I think that's important to try to communicate with those people. But the other thing is, as Savannah, mentioned, is that idea of not forgetting what got you here in the first place, or the customers who got you here in the first place. And that one thing that comes to mind is that people who market to different types of outlets, they might have a CSA, and they might have wholesale clients, they might have a farmer's market stand. In many cases, they'll mention prioritizing the CSA customers. And I think in general, the lesson there is about making sure that you keep the people who have committed to already giving you money, whether that be in the past or whether that be in a CSA subscription share, keeping those people happy, because they're the ones who've shown you the love already. And so I think that this customer retention message, again, it's good to keep customers, but Savannah's provided a pretty compelling case here. Just a couple other thoughts, because I can't get him to stop. So Savannah mentioned the radio silence thing, and then maybe it's social media silence in the 21st century. But I think one thing to think about with that, keeping the messaging going and keeping that contact with your customers, and also keeping customers happy and loyal, is that in the social media sphere, social media era, the best assets you have are customers who are willing to vouch for your products to the people who they know. I say this, but it's true. Old media was about getting your message out to people. Old advertising was about advertising it to people. Social media, a lot of the new media, there's still a lot of that happens, but a good portion of it is about getting real people to market your products to others on your behalf. That does not have to be as nefarious as that just sounded, but that is where we should be thinking. It's not just about putting out, and customer retention is going to be a byproduct of that. Another aspect of retaining customers that I sometimes preach in our visual merchandising courses is thinking about your branding, having a logo, even just a simple sticker or a card or something on the bag, that if someone buys something from you, they take it home. I say, if you have a little logo sticker on that box of blueberries that you sold, and they're great blueberries, you have bought a tiny little billboard in that person's refrigerator that they can remember where they got that product from, where they can go back and get it again. And that's another part of it. You can't retain a customer if they don't remember who you are. So those are just a couple of just intermittent thoughts there about other things but Savannah covered it brilliantly. When we talk about this concept of customer retention, sometimes we think about direct marketing or even customer acquisition. We think about direct marketing, individual people, and that's because a lot of people in the state do market in that way. But there's other ways to market your products, and there are other types of customers. Sometimes we call them buyers. But those different types of customers require different types of communication strategies. They require different timelines on communication. And we could think of no one better to talk about this than Olivia Vogel from K-Card. So she's going to share some thoughts on these frank conversations with buyers.
Thanks, Brett. Like he mentioned, and that was a very generous introduction, I'm with the Kentucky Center for Agriculture and Rural Development. You may know us from our business development or grant facilitation work, but I'm working on a new project specifically with local foods, connecting farmers to new buyers, growing their markets. So today I want to talk about how having a conversation with other buyers other than your direct-to-consumer market is a really important part of off-season marketing and customer retention for all the same reasons that Savannah already laid out for direct-to-consumer sales. So a few questions to ask you at the beginning are just, where do you want to sell more? What buyers do you want to sell less to? How will selling to X buyer versus A buyer change your business's profitability? And what kind of demand are those buyers going to have next year? You may not know the answer to that last question especially, but it's really important to just kind of zoom back for a minute and think about these bigger picture questions. So as part of that zooming out, think about 2020 and the year that you just had. There's a good chance that maybe your buyer makeup looked a little bit different than it had in years past. Maybe you relied more on direct-to-consumer sales and less on restaurant sales. There's several different mixes where you could have had more sales in a certain area, and I don't need to go into that, but I think it's really important, since you may have had a different normal this past year, to instead of just blindly kind of walking into the same normal or changing your business operation for next year, just pause for a minute and evaluate how this year went, how your buyer relations went in light of these three things. So first, profitability and your business goals. Did maybe any buyer relationships changing, did that help you become more profitable? Or was it frankly not as profitable for your business? Or if it wasn't as profitable as you want, but you still want to head in that direction because it aligned with other business goals, how do you change specific parts of your business to make it more profitable? So that's the first thing, is to evaluate buyers in terms of your business goals and profitability. I think it's also really important to consider your personal goals. So certain buyer relationships may not align with, the time off that you need to have for your family or personal life, and that's really important to consider when you're thinking about who you're going to target to be your buyer. And then also, each farm, each buyer, there's just certain givens, like maybe where they're located, where your farm's located. You're going to have physical constraints in your business that make some markets a better fit and some markets not a good fit. And so an example of this might be, if your farm does not have a lot of tillable acreage, you probably don't need to be pursuing growing a wholesale watermelon crop, because you probably need to be spending your efforts being more profitable with a crop that's going to require smaller acreage, maybe direct to consumer, to capture more of that dollar. So let's think about all of these buyer relationships in light of these kind of three components. Okay, so first, just think about who were your buyers this year. And when I say buyers, a few examples might be like a local retail grocery store, maybe a gift shop. Maybe you sell honey or jam, and so you can sell shelf-stable goods to a gift shop. Maybe it's a chef for a restaurant, or any local store. Maybe it's a wholesale buyer for a crop. Those are some examples of kind of who I'm talking about. So start out with evaluating your existing customers. Like Savannah said, they've already bought from you. Who bought from you in this last year? Do you want to sell more or less to them? You make that decision first based on the slide that we just talked about. And then if it's more or less, you need to make a plan, and you need to communicate that plan with your business partners and with the buyer of your product. You need to talk about how this season went for you. They can share their input on how it went for them. Maybe there's like very simple things that I guess just like in our personal relationships, um, if if we just communicated, oh, this was really bothering me about the way you were dropping off your product in this part of the store versus this part of the store, that could actually be a really big deal for the buyer. And it could be a simple fix on your end, but because it's not communicated or fixed before the new season, that stuff can kind of rub and create tension. So just talk to your buyers and see how this year went. Communicate how you would like to go forward in the upcoming season. Talk to them about any expectations that they have for their new year, how you can maybe supply or help with those needs that they have for the new year. And is there growth for your sales to specific buyers? So can you partner with them in marketing, or I know like in-person events are obviously on a standstill, but maybe you could have a flyer or a newsletter that you distribute at their store one week. So if you've identified existing buyers who you really like working with and you want to sell more to, it's profitable, it works with your personal and business goals, cultivate that relationship for growth. So then second, you want to identify any potential new markets or buyers that you need. So think about these in really specific ways. Identify the need that you have as a business and then find a buyer that meets that need. So examples of this might be you just have a bumper tomato crop coming in at the end of July. You're able to supply all of your accounts. But you need a wholesale buyer for maybe 6 weeks. Or maybe you need to increase your income in the month of March. So I would recommend very different buyers for those two different needs. So you need to know which ones you're going after. Who's the target customer that's going to meet your needs. And then a really important part of gaining new buyers or customers is having a professional product pitch. This is going to be really important if you're working with a retail location, a chef, a wholesale buyer. So some of the things that you might want to go ahead and prepare now in the off season: a product price list, a seasonality chart, solidify your delivery schedule for the season, make note of any certifications that your farm has, maybe like a third-party GAP audit or organic certified, or whatever that is. Just having the logo ready to put on your forms or whatever, and then going ahead and having those marketing materials to include in your product pitch. The last thing I want to say about gaining new buyers like this specifically is that there's resources in the state to help you with this if you don't know where to start or if you just need assistance. So my role specifically is to help Kentucky farmers form relationships with new buyers for them. So whether that's the wholesale marketplace, whether that's retail, if you're targeting gift shops, if it has to do with local food and growing your sales, I'm here to help. There's other people who are also there to help. There's folks at the Kentucky Department of Ag. Lexington has a local food coordinator. Our friends at CFA they have a strong presence in Eastern Kentucky. So reach out. You don't have to go this alone. There's people who have already cultivated relationships and would love to make the introduction for you. Just 2 takeaways. These are kind of just, you've probably heard these before, but failing to plan is planning to fail. So no one knows what next year is going to look like as far as, maybe when we're going to ease out of this pandemic, but going ahead and having a plan in place is going to prepare you for whatever comes at us in 2021. Just want to highlight that communication piece of your existing or new buyers. If you kind of like prime the pump, you're going to be ready for whatever comes at you. And if you have to ask more of specific buyers, that's going to be an easier ask if you have a good relationship with them. And communication is key. So talk to your buyers. There's my contact information, and would be happy to talk one-on-one with any farmers on the call.
Thank you, Olivia. One of the things you mentioned that just kind of came to mind for me is that we are called the Center for Crop Diversification, but part of what we talk about is market diversification too, and having this suite of buyers to be able to produce certain crops for certain people, but having that plan clear on what goes where and whether you have the production capacity and the processing capacity in order to make that happen. I think it just opens up a bigger question about this idea of being honest about a self-assessment of your strengths and weaknesses and how that fits with different market channels and different crops. I think it's a huge piece. And so there is the frank conversation with the buyer, but there's also the frank conversation with yourself and with anybody involved in the operation. I'll just mention that idea of honest self-reflection. There's some tools and other things that we offered in our previous webinar, or 2 webinars ago, about considering new markets and new crops. And the recording of that's available on our website, so you might want to go back and check that out. So we have had a couple of questions come in. Just go ahead and open this up to the group here. Are there certain giveaways you aren't allowed to do at the farmers market? I think I'll take my first swing at it. I think most of that's probably going to be governed by local health department regulations first, and secondarily the bylaws of your farmers market. That if you have certain rules about not being able to do those, something along those lines. And especially right now amidst COVID restrictions and probably going into 2021, depending on how things shake out, things like samples or things that you can eat on site, that's going to be a little bit up in the air, and you're going to have to figure that out on a case by case. As far as broad provisions or laws or anything like that against that, I'm not aware of anything, but I am as far from a lawyer, maybe not as far from a lawyer, but pretty close. Anybody else have any other thoughts on that? Okay, here's another one, and I'll ask this to the group, and then I will be quiet after asking. Do you have any ideas? So how do you ask customers to give reviews? I'm assuming like on a Facebook or a Google review of some sort. Thoughts on sticks, carrots, anything to have that conversation?
Yeah, I think a really easy one that I've seen and I've used in the past is kind of incorporating reviews into a giveaway. So, every person that leaves a review in the next week will be entered into a giveaway for, whatever it may be. Something like that could be really easy. I don't know if anyone else has any other ideas.
Yeah, similarly, I buy product from an online business that if you leave a review, you get a 10% off discount. And that actually motivated me to leave a review. And I think just asking your customers, your loyal customers, that it means something to you, reminding them to do it.
Yeah, I think a lot of CSAs will send out a review or ask for a review after the season has ended. And I think to frame it as, I would love to hear your feedback. What can we do to better serve your needs is really helpful.
Great, thank you. Now one more question here, coming from a familiar face. And I'll just briefly point out, this person also mentioned one thing that I didn't account for was alcohol, giving away alcohol as part of a giveaway, deal sweetener, or whatever. So that's just one of those things that, yeah, you're gonna need to navigate that. But I would not start giving away booze to anybody as a giveaway without checking to make sure that that's probably not going to be okay. There's one more, a little bit longer question here, but I'll skip over that for just a second. Would it be better to use the term or phrase customer to make it a little more personal? I'm assuming that's with regard to the use of the word buyer there.
Yes, I would say so. I was just trying to distinguish, I think, between direct to consumer customers versus other customers like retail or wholesale. That's what I'm calling a buyer. But yes, of course, I think if you're talking to them, letting know you value them as a customer.
Yeah.
Good point.
When approaching buyers, is it best to have some samples to give, or better to have an initial conversation then bring samples if interested? So I'm imagining you go to talk to somebody and they mentioned that this is more on a retail, wholesale kind of specific environment. If I go and talk to a restaurant, if I go and talk to a grocery store, should I show up with a box of samples? Should I have an initial conversation first? Should I hide it behind my back? Maybe direct that specifically to Olivia first, and then if anybody else has any thoughts.
Sure. So samples can be a really great tool. Can let people know that you're serious and can give them a taste of the quality of your product. I think right now things may be a little bit different just because of COVID. You're probably not doing as many just like, I'm going to stop by and show up to this place and knock on the back door. But yeah, I think I would recommend, if you are doing kind of cold calling or showing up places, have samples in your truck if you have them available. You know, I don't think that samples need to be extravagant. You're not trying to like woo somebody, or but they just need to be a good reflection of your offerings. So you can offer that. Maybe you have it with you in the van. But that's my first take.
Yeah, and I think if you're keeping them as standby, like, and the quality degrades over time, you're better off to follow up and say, I'll get you some fresh, good product. I'm sorry, Emily, I think I cut you off.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I was just going to second to Olivia. I used to kind of be in a position of a buyer, if you will, and working for a small business, super, super pressed for time always. So if someone's there already, I would like, you know, yeah, you got it in your truck, like, let's see it, you know, instead of like, oh, well, let me look at my calendar and make another thing. Like, you know, I think just always be prepared after that initial conversation to have it would be a good idea.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we don't have any more questions right now. If you have more, please feel free to drop those in. I'll go ahead and jump over to my section. And Olivia did a great job of navigating that topic, especially in 2020, especially in a tight time frame. But I would really encourage you, if you want to have a deeper conversation, to get in contact with her / K-Card in general. I try to only recommend things to people, to our clients, that I think are super helpful. And one of the things that I most frequently recommend is contacting K-Card for that very reason. And actually, we have a special guest in the audience, a former K-Card employee, Katie Bowman, who's been helping us by asking some directing questions. And she and Olivia and I presented a promotion webinar back in the spring. And part of that was talking about email content. And I thought that she covered it so well that I'm just going to heavily borrow considerably from that section that she put together. Katie's fortunately for her, unfortunately for us, has moved on to a different job. And so I don't no longer get to ride on her coattails, but I will ride on them one more time through the next section here about email marketing. And specifically, I think email is one of the most broadly accepted effective marketing channels that most businesses engage in. It's just is effective. And I think there's different reasons why that might be. Facebook, social media gets a lot of play. I mean, word of mouth is still a powerful medium, but email is, I think, powerful. And an analogy that I would say is that, like, your Facebook posts, when you put them out, if you have a big account, it's something like a billboard maybe that you put up on the side of the road. Everybody can see it. People who are interested are going to pay attention, whatever. If you don't have a big account, and I'm talking like a huge account, it's maybe even more analogous to the paper flyer at the community cork board. The email message is more like those mailers that you get in the mail. And I know we're coming off of a political season where a small rainforest was probably killed to promote political candidates, just to me. But the difference is that information, the reason they spend all that money to do that is to get that information into your house or into your mailbox at the very least. And that's the same thing that's happening with email. And the thing you have to remember, the difference between those mailers and your emails that you're sending out is that you are offering good, helpful, and desirable information to people, especially if they have gone out of their way to sign up for your email. And so all that is just a little bit of a case. I have some data here. The data is compelling. The data are compelling. I would get less caught up on the specific numbers, but more on the principle behind them. This is mostly from private marketing research. But people who go and they receive an email and then they go through and they make a purchase, as compared to people who just go and purchase something off of your website or whatever, tend to spend more. So if I make my purchase mediated through the through that email correspondence, I tend to purchase more. That's probably associated with a number of different things, including the fact that I'm already loyal enough to have signed up for your email in the first place. I mentioned this earlier, but it's just to underscore it here. People who receive emails from you are 3 times more likely to share that on social media. They are more likely because they've said that I'm an interested, loyal customer. I will share that on your behalf and help to promote that. This last one here is a little bit of why, but also part of the how, or making sure that you're thinking through it. 73% in this case of younger people use their phone to check an email. And so what that means is when I receive an email that is formatted super strangely and it's in some weird thing that doesn't scale and all the text is like the size of a grain of sand, I'm probably not going to go and purchase something from there because I can't even see the link to click on it. But young people still do use email. That's probably the other subtext of this. It's not all Snapchat. Okay, go on to there we go. So this is moving into a little bit of the how. I think these are just some general places to start. Anytime that you use one of those platforms that Emily mentioned earlier, the MailChimps and the Constant Contacts and even the Squares and those others, you're going to start to generate your own user analytics and data. We did a whole presentation on analytics earlier this year, or earlier in this webinar series. It was the very first one back in November. And generating and analyzing those analytics are going to be useful to you. But, and so that's the asterisk before I even say the point. It generally seems that emails that are sent on Tuesdays and emails that are sent around 11 a.m., that tends to be like a sweet spot of people opening, conversions, that type of thing. This is not going to be a silver bullet. If you start sending out emails on Tuesdays at 11 a.m., you are not going to be Amazon.com overnight. However, it's just a place to start. You know, it's like, how do you pick an arbitrary time out of, well, there's a good place to start. Thursdays and weekends are other good options, falling kind of behind those. We can go on all kinds of social psychology of why and how this is, but that's what people have tended to see in a lot of, again, mostly private marketing research. The last note here is you want it to be pretty, but you want it to be simple because it's going to be opened on a whole lot of different devices. People are already overwhelmed in a number of different ways. You want to keep it nice and simple, and that part of that is having a plain text message. This will be there'll be options within if you use one of those providers that does the email communication. And you know, images are great. A powerful image is great. 15 mediocre images is worse than one great image. And so Katie had provided this here as an example that she had received. It looks really nice, fairly minimal, not overly formatted. It would scale nice to a phone. A couple more just tips here. This is thinking a little bit about what the content is that you're sharing. What is going on? Savannah, multiple people mentioned this, Emily as well. This is like that educational component, but it's also just sort of a news and update and staying in contact with people. So I had a CSA this last year, for instance, and the producer who was sending me weekly messages has now kept sending me about monthly messages since then. And you know what that does? It does give me some insight into what's going on in his farm. I work with a lot of different farms, and so like I kind of have a sense of what might be going on. But at the same time, it has kept me I'm reminded that that person exists on a very basic level via email in a way that I do not engage with on social media. Couple other options for the types of things to share, new products and events. Katie, in our previous conversations and presentations, would always talk about on social media, not just constantly trying to sell stuff, but sometimes trying to sell stuff. So you want to send out content that's non-selling a majority of the time, but you also want to remember to be able to sell that. Yeah, so Katie's hopefully feeding me some lines here. So 80, she's the split that as we see in some of the marketing is 80% non-selling. That would include education, that would include updates, that would include the personal cute pics of your kids or whatever, and then 20% selling. And what I found is a lot of people get really excited about that 80% portion, and then they almost forget to do the selling part. Or they hate social media, they hate email marketing, and all they want to do is just like go and hit that sell button once a month. You can't unfortunately do that, especially if you're direct marketing. The marketing part is a big portion of what you're going to spend your time doing. The call to action, it's in bold again. Maybe that means it's important. This is because we want to give people something to do. I was really struck Savannah earlier mentioned reducing friction, and I'm going to talk about that here in a different way in a second. But part of reducing friction might be giving people a little push, and that's what a call to action can do. It's, what am I supposed to do with this information? Well, we hope you'll consider joining, or we have an early sign up for our CSA, or right now we're offering special gift cards where if you buy a $20 gift card to the farmer's market, we throw in a free $5 gift card to the gift. That's a call to action. That's something I'm trying to get you to do. It could be just liking us on Facebook. This could be an opportunity to ask for those reviews that somebody asked about earlier. It could be any number of but having, we don't always want to view our customers as utilitarian, but that relationship is fairly functional. So having some sort of something in that email to give them some way to participate. The last one I have here, again, just mentioning it again because it's very, 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 very important, is mobile friendliness. And this is on emails. Emails is where it's easiest to forget, but it's also applicable to websites. So on our CCD website, we have, 50,000 plus people visit our site every year. About 50% of them do it on a cell phone. I think that's 25,000. That's a lot. It's the same way. If you have 400 people and 50% of them open it on a phone on your email list, that's going to be 200 people that are not going to be able to read it if you're not mobile friendly. Growing your email list, making sure that there's people on the other end of that send button. Couple of things here. Make it easy. This is, again, reducing friction. We live in complicated lives, difficult lives in a number of ways. The fewer clicks, the fewer keystrokes we can make for someone to be able to get in contact with us or let us know that they're interested, the better. That could include fillable forms. It could on your website, on your social media, on your email signature. It could be, for instance, I'm going to do an example right here. I work with the Center for Crop Diversification. We have a newsletter and we have a Facebook page. And if you would like to tune out from what I'm saying right now and go and like that instead, like our Facebook page and sign up for our newsletter on our website, instead of listening to me, that might actually be a long-term better use of your time. Asking people, you don't have to be as shameless as I am, but somebody asked earlier, how do you get people to do reviews? There are incentives, there are tricks, there are all kinds of things, but a lot of the marketing is just about talking to people and reminding them in one way or another. So reminding people that you have an email list, I promise you're not any more annoying than about 50 different things that they're hearing every day. And if they like your product, they like you, it's something they actually kind of want to hear. Emily covered this earlier, but the free stuff and contests angle is one way to get that kind of participation. I have this little tiny, on the right here, these images. The one on top is just an example of a fillable form. The one on the bottom is the super low-key contest thing we did a couple of years ago where I offered these free books. I don't tell any of our contest participants, but they could have gotten these books for free because they're extension materials anyway. But I said, I'll give you a free book. I'll send you a free book if you like the page and tag someone below who you think might be interested in the Cover Crops book. And we got a bunch of engagement, like relative to where we were at that time. It can be as simple and straightforward as that. So the email marketing side of things, I think if you have not started an email list, you should really be thinking about it, because it's the most direct line of contact that you have back to your customers outside of talking to them if you're doing direct marketing. Just changing the angle a little bit. Off-season marketing up till now in some ways has implied that there is a season coming up that you're planning to sell stuff in, and you're trying to prepare for that before it happens, which is the way that you always should be doing these things. But there's another angle to being able to doing marketing and doing business this time of year. And it's actually, I think, a two-pronged idea. I've seen these as connected for a long time. I think a number of people are starting to agree with that. And that's both this value added and the season extension side of things. So value added products, you are able to have a certain amount of shelf stability to be able to sell products from when stuff stops growing in the ground outside through the next period where you can put stuff back in the ground again. And then season extension is pushing the limits on that limit on those seasonal constraints in the first place. So I'm not going to go super deep on the value added stuff, and we could just kind of like click and then count to 3 and then click again. It's a very dramatic effect. So the value added side of things, there's a lot of complexity both on the marketing and the production side. And so I would not recommend that you jump right in and just start producing stuff, especially given you've maybe seen some of the commercial production kitchen fee structure changing. This would be a really great opportunity to work with the Food Systems Innovation Center and or K-Card. You can reach out to us and we can help get you connected as well to really do some intense thinking before you jump into value added. However, it is an opportunity. There are opportunities to make money through value added products, but it is a complex part of the process. But I know a number of farms who have fresh product during the season, and they also have this more extensive non-seasonal product line. So Olivia did the same thing here. She jumped in and promoted her the K-Card funding email and the monthly business tips email. I would highly recommend both of those. You can go ahead and click maybe 2 more times. Any enterprise that you get into, you'll hear us say this, you'll hear K-Card say this, you'll hear anybody say this that wants you to make money and be successful, is that accounting for some of the costs, especially in a complex system like value added, is absolutely critical before you jump in and start expecting to make money. So the other angle that sometimes is not as frequently laid out is season extension. And so this is an opportunity to grow into the shoulder seasons in a way that you aren't able to do just outside, which means you can have certain products in the off season. I once upon a time used to work in the research high tunnels growing vegetables for UK. I've probably given some or anybody who's a tour of those tunnels and talked about the challenges and different successes we've had and our planting dates and all that kind of fun stuff. I used to work for Krista Jacobson. On the back row there is we have a high tunnel planting date calendar that came out a couple of years ago. It is kind of just a graphic layout of when to plant, when you can expect to harvest based on a typical year. We also have other publications about season extension production. Again, this is not supposed to be a comprehensive, here you go, here's your starter pack on season extension. But you'll notice the high tunnel economics publication, but we also have a low tunnel economics publication. You can click. Again, my refrain here, cost accounting is going to be crucial because it's more expensive to produce products in a high tunnel or in any season extension system than it is to produce them outside. It just objectively is. I would recommend, and this is after seeing tons of people jump in guns blazing on a high tunnel, think about adding complexity really only as you need it. Sometimes people don't quite take advantage of the full outdoor season before they start moving indoors. And believe me, I get it. It's much more pleasant to harvest kale in a 60-degree high tunnel than it is in 32-degree wet, sloppy December. Luckily, we had field plots and in high tunnel plots, so I got to experience both to compare those. But I would also just say that the marketing of these products is fundamentally different, is going to be fundamentally different than anything you've done before that is in a traditional seasonal window. The farmer's market isn't necessarily there. People aren't thinking about CSA in the same way. You could still do it, but do not launch into a production system with an assumption that there's this huge untapped market that you are going to be able to just immediately jump into. It can be done. It can certainly be done. Schools provide some opportunities there if you can make the price structure work. But all that to say, season extension can be a really cool part of having product, even just a little bit of product to keep people interested through the winter seasons, to be able to launch back in to, as Emily said, to hype up your main season crops. So that brings us to the end here. I did not see any other questions come out. I just want to make sure I didn't miss any before. So I'll mention, I think for me personally, the best case scenario for you from this presentation is that you wrote down 2, 3, maybe even up to 10 things that you're going to try to do to improve your off-season marketing and to help prepare you for next season. Think about retaining and communicating with those customers you already have, maybe communicating with a new buyer or two. But this can easily become a very overwhelming thing. And I think there's pretty strong data that came out of USDA a couple of years ago about the businesses that tend to have the highest survival rates are the ones that tend to grow a little bit more slowly. And so if you feel like you're falling behind, don't worry. Just smart, steady planning is the route to take. The other thing I would just mention, we put our contact information in these presentations for a reason. It's not just, for me, it's because I do also like seeing my name in print, but it's primarily so that you will take that and use it to contact us after the fact. And if we can't help you, frequently I can't help people who reach out to me, but I will do my best to connect you to the people who can. Frequently that has just been a call to K card and or your local agent, but it could be someone else in that case. Does anybody else, I just don't want to take the full conclusion. Anybody else have any particular closing thoughts you want to share? Okay, well, thank you all so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you. Let's see here. Oh, you're very, very welcome. Thank you for tuning in. We have one more webinar next week. We also have recordings of all the other stuff we've covered this fall available on our website. Oh, and really quickly before you go, let me share with you the link to the survey. I'll also send this out in the email, but if you could go and complete that, that would help us out a lot. I'll drop that in the chat. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all for making this series so fun. And thanks to my esteemed co-presenters for sharing your expertise with us this morning. Everybody have a great rest of your day and the rest of your week. Bye-bye.